they sent us back to Pearl Harbor to get radar put on the ship. The British had just invented radar. So we got in Pearl Harbor. On the way back, they knew something was coming up because they darkened ship at night. No lights on topside at all, so they wouldn't see you, supposedly. And below decks, if you open a hatch, we had little red bulbs on the bulkheads. They were just red lights, and you could see where you were going, but no white lights at all, exposed. If you open a hatch, there was no white light. And we manned all the machine guns coming back from Manila. That was 2 months before the war, so they knew the war was going to come, but they didn't know where. And then when we got back, it steamed about 25 knots, which is unusual for, usually it's 10 or 15 knots in your leisure, but 25 knots all the way back. Speed was at the utmost. So we got in Pearl Harbor, and everything seemed serene and peaceful, and they tied us up to a pier, what I think they called it the 1010 pier, and there was the Honolulu cruiser was inside of us, and on the other side was the cruiser San Francisco. We were tied up to the Honolulu, and then we went out to check something, I forget what it was, and they put us in the Navy Yard, and they had men on the mast putting in the radar. And the radar guys were working every day, and we used to shoot the breeze with them, and I became very friendly with one of them. He came from Dorchester. I knew of his area, but I didn't know him. And I used to go over to his house when I got a chance and sit down with him and his wife and the baby and have lunch and enjoyed myself. But we were on a strict routine from noon to midnight. You had to be back on the ship at midnight. You couldn't stay overnight in Hawaii. They knew something was coming, but they didn't know where. And I read books since then, and they had no idea it was going to happen. That's a lot of baloney. They knew exactly what was going to happen, but they didn't know where. Because when we left Manila, the ship was darkened completely, and that's unusual. To cruise in the Pacific with no lights, no nothing, and we were all by ourselves and at top speed. So they knew something was coming. And then December 7th, I had a date with a nurse in the Queens Hospital, and my friend Fitzy from Yonkers, New York, he had a date with there was 2 nurses. So we were all set to go ashore and get my dress lights on and everything else. And all of a sudden, I was talking to Ensign McConaughey. He was the ensign in charge of the deck that day and on duty. So I was talking to him, and I looked up, and there was a whole fleet of planes coming in over Diamond Head. And I looked at him, I says, "We're going to have another drill. Here comes the planes," because they used to drill us every other day. You know? And then I looked at them, and they were just planes, a bunch of planes, and never gave it a second thought. Then all of a sudden, a few of them broke off and they dived towards the subbase, which was where I was standing. The subbase is to our right, which would be east. And they dove down close, and they were right off the water. And I said to myself, they're going to get, censored for stunt flying, which the Navy didn't like. And then I realized that they weren't our planes. And then they were like from here to that wall away from me, the first ones that dropped their torpedoes, right astern of our ship. And the first 3 of them dropped their torpedoes, and I looked and I said, Japanese planes. So Ensign McConaughey said to me, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, to see the red ball." And okay, general quarters. So by then, the next 3 had come down and dropped torpedoes. So I started taking off, and the bugle calls are sounding, and they're going over the loudspeaker, all men man your battle stations, and I'm headed up to the forecastle to turret 1 because that's where I was stationed. And all of a sudden, I hear the boom, boom, and wow-wee. I looked over, and I think it was a West Virginia. I can't think of the other battleship now. My memory's going, but the California was first, the West Virginia was second, and there was a battleship outside of it, and it rolled over. Now, the Oklahoma rolled over and sunk and trapped all those guys inside. And then behind that, there was 2 more battleships. And then the Nevada was way down the other end of the creek. And all hell broke loose, and everywhere you looked, there was explosions. And I was inside the gun turret, and I got my rangefinder out, and I could see the planes every once in a while going by, in my line of vision. And I said to myself, there's a lot happening. And then the gunnery officer in the turret was a Marine lieutenant. I can't even remember his name. Barrows, I think it was. Barrows. And he said, I want volunteers to cut down the awnings because in summertime in Hawaii it gets hot. And they stretched awnings from the sides of the turrets to the lifelines so you could walk around underneath. You wouldn't be out in the boiling sun all the time. And we used to sleep on deck because it was hot. And I had the job of cutting down the awnings, so there was a couple of us. The rangefinder operator recited all the ranges. I was taking them, and he was reciting them to the gunnery officer. And I looked outside, and I said, I got to cut the awnings down. So I got my Bowie knife. They just issued Bowie knives before that to all the Navy. And I went out and I started cutting rope. And all of a sudden I see pop, pop, pop coming through the awning. So I ducked under the turret. It's about this high off the deck. And it's about 8 feet deep. So I dove under there, and the bullets tore up the deck, the wooden deck right near me. And then when that went by, I got back out and I started cutting more awnings. And finally I got all the awnings cut off the number 1 and number 2 turret. And then when the planes came in, I just ducked behind the big round thing on the bottom of the turret. They call it a barbette. I ducked behind that and watched the planes go by. A couple of them went by, they were burning. And you could see the pilots' faces. Another one went by, he's trailing gasoline out like crazy. And he wasn't on fire, but he was trailing gas all over the place. And our anti-aircraft guns were shooting at them. And they hit him before he got out of sight. And about maybe 2 hours later, after watching all the explosions on the battleships, and the Pennsylvania was in dry dock, and the 2 destroyers in front of her got hit. One of them got hit. They were on cradles in the dry dock because they were painting the bottoms. And one fell over against the other. And then I saw the sister ship tied to a pier, and it was listing quite a bit, so it got hit. And we backed out around 11 o'clock in the morning, backed out of the slip on our own. Usually they have a tugboat pull you out, but it takes all that time to get the steam up. You have to light off the boilers and get the steam pressure up, so there's steam turbines. And by the time they got everything ready, it was 11 o'clock in the morning. And we backed out of our slip, and the battleship Nevada was coming by. And the Arizona blew up about that time, and it was a tremendous explosion. And then the Nevada was close, and when the Nevada went by, we were backing down to get behind it. So Nevada went by, we pulled in behind it, and we had to wet down all the ammunition lockers on the starboard side because the heat was so intense from the Arizona. Excuse me. And then we proceeded to follow the Nevada out the channel. And as we're going out the channel, the Nevada got hit by 2 torpedoes. A 2-man sub in the channel launched torpedoes at the Nevada, and they hit it. And the bow was pretty well damaged, so they kicked it ahead all full, and you could see the sea boiling up. All ahead full, and they beached it. And they beached it right about the entrance to Hickam Field, where the planes come in, not the entrance actually, the plane entrance, at the end of the runway. And it's near the city of Honolulu. So when the Nevada beached itself, we took right rudder and passed it. And the starboard side of our ship hit the reef, and it was bouncing. And I looked through the scopes in number 1 turret. I could see the bow, and I see the water and everything in front of me, see what was going on. And I'm looking, and all of a sudden I see 2 trails coming down, so I screamed into the phones, torpedoes off the bow. One of them hit a reef in front of us, and the other went by us about 5 feet away, all the way. So I don't know where that one went. And then we got out of the channel, out into the open water, and there was a 2-man sub at Barbara's Point. And the gunnery crew on the number 1 mount spotted it and fired at it and knocked the conning tower off it. And they couldn't submerge because it was shallow water. But they're the ones that fired the torpedo that hit the Nevada. So I don't know who fired ours. They were out in the ocean somewhere. And we cleared the channel anyway, and we went looking for the Japanese fleet.